Welcome, everyone. Tonight we are diving deep, and I mean deep, into one of the most powerful, most mysterious moments in the Zohar. We're talking about the night Sarah spent in Pharaoh's palace. You know, this isn't just a story, it's a moment so charged, it basically contains the seed for an entire nation's redemption. It reveals this living, breathing matrix of divine protection, and we're going to unpack it all. Let's get into it.
So here's our roadmap for tonight's journey. First up, we'll set the scene with a night of dread and wonder. Then we'll peel back the curtain to reveal the indwelling luminous shield. After that, we get into the core principle of holiness as active defense. And then, for all you tech heads out there, we'll explore the Sephirotic protection matrix, the cosmic mechanics of it all. We'll wrap things up by translating this ancient code into some really cool modern metaphors.
All right, so let's set the scene. You got to understand, when Abraham and Sarah go down to Egypt because of the famine, they're not just crossing a border. The Zohar paints this picture of Egypt as, well, it's a whole different dimension of reality. It's a place spiritually defined by its deep, deep immersion in promiscuity and some really dark energies. It is, without a doubt, the absolute last place on earth a soul like Sarah's should ever be.
And right in the heart of that darkness is Pharaoh's palace. I want you to just picture this. Dim, flickering torchlight, it's dancing across these huge oppressive golden walls. You can almost smell the thick incense in the air, feel the suffocating weight of absolute power. And this palpable creeping dread. The whole atmosphere is in total spiritual opposition to every single thing that Sarah represents.
So how do they even find her? Well, the Zohar tells this incredible story. Abraham tries to hide Sarah in a chest, right? But when Pharaoh's officials demand to inspect it, the moment they crack open the lid, a brilliant light just explodes out of it. And they're not just seeing physical beauty. No, this is an otherworldly radiance that her own sanctity just can't hide. Her own holiness literally gives her away. How amazing is that?
And just like that, she's taken. She is brought into the most private, most dangerous place you can possibly imagine, Pharaoh's own chambers. Picture her. She's standing there, and to any normal person's eyes, she is completely alone, a captive, totally at the mercy of the most powerful man in the known world. But she's not alone, is she? The text tells us she is surrounded by an unseen but intensely palpable radiant presence. A luminous guardian force is literally hovering, just saturating the air around her.
Okay, this next part is it's one of the most shocking details in the whole tradition. Because this protection wasn't some vague force field. It was absolute, it was immediate, and it was almost personal. Get this. Pharaoh doesn't even get close to Sarah. The text says he reaches for her sandal, the lowest, most mundane thing she has on, and an angel strikes him down with the sandal. He reaches for an earring, he gets struck. A bracelet, he's struck again. Her very belongings were turned into weapons.
So this is the scene playing out all night long. The mighty Pharaoh, a man who is literally considered a god on earth, tries again and again to approach her, and each time, bam, an invisible, unstoppable force just strikes him down. He is halted instantly, physically thrown back. Can you imagine? The room, which started with this vibe of sinister power, is now just filled with raw terror and awe. The predator has completely become the prey.
So this just raises the obvious questions, right? This whole thing was way too precise to be random. So what was this invisible force that could just humble a king like that? What was its nature? And maybe even more important, who or what was in control? Who was deploying it with such perfect surgical timing? Well, answering that takes us to the next level of our journey. Okay, so we're moving from the story itself to the remez, the hint of what's really going on behind the scenes. And thankfully, the text doesn't leave us guessing about who this protector was. It gives us a name for this luminous guardian force, a name that is absolutely central to all of Jewish mysticism, the Shekhinah.
Now, before we go any further, let's make sure we're all on the same page with what the Shekinah actually is. You'll often hear it translated as the divine presence, and that's true, but it's more specific. The Shekinah is the indwelling, the immanent, and the distinctly feminine aspect of the divine. So this isn't God way up in the heavens. This is the very presence of God that dwells within the fabric of creation itself, within communities, within holy places, and, as we're about to see, within a holy person.
This line from the Zohar right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole thing. Think about it. Why wasn't Abraham terrified out of his mind? He knew what Egypt was all about. The text is crystal clear. He was not afraid because he could see the Shekinah was with her. He wasn't just hoping and praying for a miracle. He could literally perceive, with his own spiritual senses, that Sarah was walking into that palace with the manifest presence of the divine as her escort. He knew she was never, not for one single second, alone.
And this is a really critical distinction we have to make. The Shekinah wasn't some external bodyguard that Abraham called down from heaven for an emergency assignment. No, it was a living, breathing, fully integrated shield that was just an extension of Sarah's own profound sanctity. Because of who she was, the divine presence never departed from her. It was part of her very being, like a spiritual immune system, an aura of holiness so powerful that it became a tangible physical defense.
So, that answers our second big question. Who is in control? Who is in the driver's seat? The Zohar says it was Sarah herself. Because she was the vessel for the Shekinah, she was in command. This striking force, this angel, was basically an executive function of that presence, and it was just waiting for her orders. The text says it plain as day. She would say to the angel, "Strike," and he would strike. She was the field commander of her own divine protection. Amazing.
Okay, now we're going to go deeper. We're moving from the hint, the remez, to the sod, the secret itself. So we know what protected her, the Shekinah. We know who controlled it, Sarah. But now we need to understand the how and the why. What is the underlying spiritual law here? What's the core principle that made this whole incredible event even possible?
And here's the absolute core of it. What happened to Sarah wasn't some one-time special effects miracle. No, it was a demonstration of a universal spiritual principle. And the secret is this: true embodied holiness, it's not a passive state, it's active. It automatically generates and activates a constant divine protection system. It's basically a law of spiritual physics.
So let's break down the physics of how this works. First, Sarah's immense righteousness created a tangible, real, sacred space around her body. Think of it like a sovereign spiritual territory. Second, Pharaoh's creepy approach wasn't just a physical move. It was a metaphysical violation, a trespass across a holy boundary. So, third, the striking force, that angel, was the system's automatic enforcement protocol just kicking into gear. It's the spiritual equivalent of that ancient temple rule, which the text actually quotes here: "The stranger who approaches shall be put to death." It is an absolute, non-negotiable boundary.
To really make this click, let's use a modern analogy from cybersecurity. What was happening in that chamber, it wasn't just magic. It was spiritual technology. You could think of Sarah's holiness as being like a highly advanced, real-time active defense system. Let's just walk through the process flow. Step 1, intrusion detection. The system detects Pharaoh's malicious intent the instant he has it. Step 2, threat analysis. His approach is immediately flagged as a violation of sacred protocol. Step 3, automated countermeasure. A precise, non-lethal defensive strike is deployed. And finally, Step 4, the system log. The event is logged. And get this, it happened 10 times. That number is a pattern, a foreshadowing of the 10 plagues that would later strike all of Egypt.
So, if Sarah's holiness was this incredible defense system, what was its source code? What's running under the hood? Well, to find the cosmic mechanics, we have to look at the very architecture of creation in Kabbalah, the Sephirot. This was the divine matrix that was fully engaged to protect her that night.
Yeah, that number 10, it is absolutely not a coincidence. The Zohar is very explicit about it. 10 times that night, Sarah commanded the angel to strike. 10 times Pharaoh was repelled. This is the ultimate example of microcosm and macrocosm. This personal series of 10 protective strikes for Sarah was the spiritual template, the seed form of the 10 national plagues that would later strike all of Egypt and bring about the Exodus. One soul's redemption contained the entire code for a nation's redemption.
So we can actually map this whole event right onto the tree of life. The foundation, the operating system, is Malkut. That's the divine presence dwelling within Sarah. But the raw power for the strike, that comes from Gevura, or severity. But here's the thing. That raw power is perfectly balanced by chesed, or loving kindness, to make sure the goal is preservation, not total annihilation. And all these energies are working together, harmonized by Tiferet, to create this perfectly calibrated, intelligent defense. It was a whole divine matrix firing on all cylinders.
This gets even cooler. Mystical texts often describe these different Sephirotic energies not just as concepts, but as visual phenomena, specifically as shifts in color. So we can actually visualize the security system activating as a sequence of these incredible auric flashes, with each color corresponding to a different divine attribute coming online.
Okay, so it all begins with the baseline state, right? The system on standby. I want you to picture a serene, deep sapphire blue aura surrounding Sarah. This is the color that's associated with Malkut, the kingdom. It's that royal indwelling presence of the Shekinah. And this isn't a temporary shield she put up. This is her constant state of being. It's a calm, regal holiness that is always there.
But then the threat approaches. Pharaoh makes his move, and the system instantly responds. That serene blue aura just flares with a brilliant, blinding white light. This signifies the activation of Chesed, divine loving kindness. Its whole job is preservation and grace. So before any attack even lands, the shield is reinforced with this energy of pure, unconditional protection for the righteous soul inside.
And then, at the very moment of attempted contact, flash! The white shield flashes an intense crimson red. This is the color of Javora, of judgment, of din. This is the countermeasure going live. That flash of red is the invisible strike. It's the system executing its defensive protocol, drawing power from the divine attribute of severity to enforce that holy boundary.
So, what happens to all that negative energy from the attack? The texts describe a flash of black. Now, this isn't the color of evil, not at all. It's the color of absorption, like a void. It represents the complete nullification of the impure force. The threat is neutralized, its dark energy is just absorbed and rendered totally inert. And then, the system recedes back to its serene blue state, leaving nothing but awe and terror behind it.
Wow, so we've journeyed all the way from the story itself to the secret. From the palace floor to the cosmic source code of the Sephirot. In this last section, we really want to bring it all home. Let's try to translate this incredibly deep mystical technology into a couple of clear modern metaphors, so that the core principle is something we can all really grasp and take with us. Okay, so let's translate this into two languages. First, for all you tech people out there, think of it as cosmic engineering. Sarah's holiness is basically a system operating at peak integrity, perfectly configured and secure. Pharaoh's approach, that's a threat vector, an unauthorized access attempt from an impure entity. And the response is an active defense protocol, an automated real-time countermeasure. The result? Threat neutralized, system integrity maintained. And if you're a gamer, this is going to click instantly. Think of Sarah as a high-level character with full health, a super high holiness stat, and all her buffs active. Pharaoh is just an enemy that enters her attack range. What happens? A passive ability automatically triggers a shield and deals thorns damage back to him. The result? Enemy is repelled, takes damage, and the player is completely unharmed. It's the same principle.
And this really brings us to the final and maybe most important thought. The Zohar isn't just telling us a cool story about Sarah. It's revealing a technology that is available to the human soul. It's teaching us that our spiritual state, our integrity, our righteousness, it creates a real, tangible field of protection around us. So the question we're all left with is this. If that's true, what kind of pharaohs are we letting get too close? What negative influences, toxic relationships, or impure thoughts are we allowing to test the boundaries of our own sacred space? Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.